Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
I've directed the Canada Industrial Relations Board to assist the parties in settling the outstanding terms of their collective agreements by imposing final binding arbitration.
Ottawa steps into the labor disputes involving Canada's two largest railways. When could commercial freight and transit lines start running again? Plus,
they're actually taking plants, like zucchini plants.
Community gardeners in Richmond say someone is pilfering their plants, potatoes, even equipment.
After the COVID, it's getting worse and worse every year.
And history saved. SFU's library says it will not stop hosting the archives of a Japanese-Canadian newspaper from the Second World War.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Under Section 107 of the Canada Labour Code, I've directed the Canada Industrial Relations Board to assist the parties in settling the outstanding terms of their collective agreements by imposing final binding arbitration.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Less than a day into the shutdown on Canada's two largest railways, the federal government has stepped in and ordered them and their unions to enter binding arbitration. CN Railway and Canadian Pacific Kansas City locked out more than 9,000 workers at midnight after negotiations broke off with the Teamsters. The Minister of Labour says freight traffic could start moving again within days. Binding arbitration means a third party reviews the arguments, then proposes a solution. McKinnon has also ordered the Industrial Relations Board to extend the terms of the current collective agreements until those new deals are signed. He also directed operations on both railways to resume soon. The companies say they're working to do that, though we're still waiting to hear from the Teamsters. The shutdown also halted transit across the country, including the West Coast Express between Mission and Vancouver. And we're now going to go there and join our Janella Hamilton, who is outside a bus terminal, which is serving as a kind of substitute. Janella, how are commuters who would normally take the West Coast Express handling this?
Yeah, Dan, commuters are a little frustrated and very tired, and it's only day one of the work stoppage. Now, just so it's clear, the West Coast Express serves about 3,000 customers daily, and that's for communities between Vancouver and Mission, with stops in Maple Ridge, Pitt Meadows, and the Coquitlam areas. Most train commuters tell us that the alternate route actually tacks on an additional hour or more to their daily travel, and there have been some concerns about replacement buses being full and actually not stopping at certain stops to bring people to work this morning. So a little frustration, and this is what people had to say.
Well, as long as the West Coast Transit still supplies us a bus, then we're good to go. So, I mean, I still have a job, so I'm not too worried. They know there's a strike, so yeah.
It's been really difficult for me a little bit because, like, I live in Pitt Meadows. I used to take it to VCC a lot to school.
It is what it is. You can't change it.
TransLink says the West Coast Express will not operate today nor tomorrow. It runs on Pacific or Canadian Pacific owned tracks and cannot operate without company dispatchers and rail workers. Both CPKC and CN say they would restart operations following the Labour Minister's announcement today, but neither offered a timeline.
All right. Janella Hamilton reporting from the Coquitlam Centre. Thanks very much. Now, amid the shutdown of freight and commuter trains, Evan Dyer looks at the political impact of the order into binding arbitration.
As trains across Canada stopped rolling, pickets went up this morning at CPKC headquarters in Calgary and at CN Rail in Montreal, where they were joined by the NDP's Jagmeet Singh.
CP Rail and CN Rail have locked them out. It is their fault that this is going on.
Singh, whose party props up the Liberals' minority government, warned his party would oppose intervention.
We're not going to accept any interference, whether that's forcing arbitration, whether that's forcing back to work. None of that is allowed on our watch.
But there was anger from those who saw their livelihoods threatened by the looming strike.
The government has a responsibility to protect Canadians, to protect the supply chain. to protect workers impacted by the work stoppage and also to protect small businesses in Canada.
Some farmers were already losing money as rail companies stopped accepting cargo.
It will impact grain farmer sales by $50 million a day, just simply because they won't be able to deliver their grain to their local grain elevators that rely on railway transportation.
By the afternoon, the government had grown tired of waiting.
I've directed the Canada Industrial Relations Board to assist the parties in settling the outstanding terms of their collective agreements by imposing final binding arbitration.
The dispute will now be settled by the Canada Industrial Relations Board, and both companies and the union will have to accept whatever settlement it imposes. Meanwhile, they must restore service.
I have also directed the board to extend the term of the current collective agreements until new agreements have been signed, and for operations on both railways to resume forthwith.
McKinnon says the trains should be rolling again within a couple of days. The government's back-to-work order will strain its relationship with the New Democrats, whose backing it depends on to remain in power. The NDP has yet to respond, but clearly the government felt the threat of a far-reaching rail strike and all the economic damage that would entail was more of a risk than losing the support of the New Democrats. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
There could be more trouble on the transportation front in Canada. Air Canada pilots have now voted to authorize a strike. About 98% of the members who cast a ballot have approved a walkout, if necessary, to win a contract from the company. The 5,000 members of the Airline Pilots Association have been pushing for greater wage parity with their American counterparts. Air Canada pilots could be in a legal strike position as early as September 17th. Premier David Eby was focused on housing for much of the day. Speaking in North Vancouver earlier, he says nearly 1,500 affordable homes have been protected from rent increases there since the launch of the Rental Protection Fund in 2023. The Premier also joined BC Today guest host Amy Bell to talk about the issues top of mind for you ahead of the provincial election. And whether it was seniors, middle-income earners, tenants, or landlords, the main issue remained housing.
Now, and not just in BC, across Canada and across North America, we've seen a real increase in rents and a lack of housing affordability. I think the epicenter, it feels like some days, is in British Columbia, as we're a very desirable place to live. With our BC Builds program, what we're doing is we're actually building housing using publicly owned land. Owned by municipalities, in some cases health authorities, school boards, First Nations, and others, and using expedited processes with local governments, getting rid of the red tape to get things built faster, and government's borrowing power to reduce the cost of financing the sites, to provide housing that is about 30% below market for middle-income households. We have a very significant social housing program for people that are living close to or at the poverty line or below. But this is something new where we're building housing for middle-income people in the province, and it's something government used to do. You know, the government used to be involved in co-ops, and I think a lot of people could probably think of examples of that. We're listening right now. The West End was built through middle-income housing, was built through government programs at the federal level. We are getting back into that business because the market is not providing the housing that people need, and we're leveraging public assets to be able to do it.
The BC Builds and the Rental Protection Fund are part of a $19 billion housing investment by the BC government. Not long after pledging one of the largest tax cuts in BC history, BC United today says if elected, it would turn this province into an international mining leader, announcing plans to secure $36 billion in near-term investment.
Today, BC United commits to positioning BC as a global mining leader by reversing the NDP's harmful permit paralysis and improving tax and regulatory competitiveness, which currently drives away billions of dollars of investment and thousands of good-paying, family-supporting jobs.
Todd says he would guarantee permits for 17 critical mineral and 5 precious metal mines if his party is elected, and implement the most competitive tax rates and rules for mining in Canada. He says they would market BC as a global supplier of low-carbon minerals that are essential for clean technologies. Now, when it comes to money, the BC government notes it is running well into the red, posting a $5 billion deficit. The finance ministry says much of the increased spending comes from fighting wildfires.
People in BC and around the world are still feeling the impact of high interest rates, inflation, and a slower global economy. Our population is growing, and we continue to respond to emergencies to keep people safe.
BC also saw a dip in natural resource revenues and spent more on healthcare, education, and housing to respond to record population growth. Conroy does say BC has one of the lowest unemployment rates in Canada. The opposition says the NDP has no plan to get back to a balanced budget. We're less than 2 months out from Election Day here in BC on October 19th. Between now and then, there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes. CBC's provincial affairs reporter Katie DeRosa takes a closer look at the rush to nominate candidates and get their messages out.
Just another day of work.
A month away from the launch of the official election campaign, Premier David Eby is working the room in Oak Bay, popping into coffee shops, baby stores, and meeting with volunteers alongside Diana Gibson, the NDP candidate for Oak Bay Gordon Head. Eby, BC Conservative leader John Rustad, and BC United leader Kevin Falcon are all going into their first election as party leaders. Sonia Furstenau is going into her second election as head of the BC Greens. While recent opinion polls have the BC Conservatives catching up to the NDP and even ahead by some measures, Eby's party has a leg up with its campaign war chest. The New Democrats lead the way on political donations. They will get the largest subsidy from Elections BC based on vote count from the 2020 election. The party will receive just over $1.6 million. BC United will get just over $1.1 million, while the BC Greens get just over $500,000. The BC Conservatives will get just over $60,000. Even with its fundraising advantage, the NDP also carries the weight of 7 years in power, and voter frustration is rampant over the cost of living, house prices, healthcare, crime, and social disorder.
To what extent is this election a referendum on BC NDP performance on these files that there's a lot of frustration?
Eby insists the province would be worse off under John Rustad.
People think things are challenging now. Well, just wait till the cost that the Conservatives are going to impose on them.
In a major turnaround from 2020, when they captured just 2% of the vote and no seats, the BC Conservatives have emerged as the main rival to the NDP.
It is definitely feeling like a Cinderella story.
BC Conservative campaign manager Angelo Isidoro says the party has nominated 82 candidates so far. In comparison, the NDP have 78 candidates confirmed, BC United has 57, and the Greens have just 31. However, Rustad's rush to handpick most of his preferred candidates for the 93 ridings has been rocky. Some riding associations are frustrated that the leader is parachuting in some candidates who have few ties to the ridings. They also claim he's stacking the party with former BC United MLAs and candidates, including Richmond's Teresa Watt. A new website has popped up called firejohnrustad.ca. It purports to be the work of disgruntled BC Conservatives who say Rustad is diluting Conservative values to try to appeal to more voters. Rustad dismissed those concerns, saying the party has grown from 500 members to about 9,000 under his leadership.
And so there may be a few people who are, disgruntled about that. I'm really not too worried about it.
BC United, meanwhile, is trying to rebound from losing several MLAs and candidates to the BC Conservatives. Its lead organizer says the party has already seen a boost after promising a major tax cut.
No one's going to come close to our policy platform. We continue to show that that's where we lead.
As for the BC Green Party, there are concerns about its ability to keep its 2 seats in the legislature. Adam Olsen, the MLA for Saanich North and the Islands, is not running again, and leader Sonia Furstenau is running in the NDP stronghold of Victoria Beacon Hill. The Greens campaign manager, however, says they will run a full slate of candidates, but focus on 6 key ridings where they think they can win. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
A new Fraser Health facility is opening in Surrey, aiming to provide holistic mental health and addiction support for children and youth. It will be open 7 days a week and include nurses, dietitians, doctors, and psychiatrists.
Bringing these services together in one building means that children, young people, and their families can receive a spectrum of support with the challenges they are facing, all under one roof.
The province estimates last year the programs served more than 2,700 referrals, but they were offered at different locations. A group that helps grow plants and vegetables in a community garden in Richmond says they are fed up with thieves. Someone has been stealing their harvests. Mira Bain says more in the push to protect the green space.
Squash, potatoes, plants, and now more often, equipment. People here at Terra Nova Community Garden say thieves have been making off with all kinds of their hard work.
Lately, it's escalated. They're actually taking plants, like zucchini plants, the plants themselves. So we find that to be a little bit tacky, if we want to put it that way.
She's not alone.
After the COVID, it's getting worse and worse every year.
Cynthia Chu says someone stole her hanging baskets along with poles to help support growing plants.
We have three gardeners, me, my friend, and the other one over there. So more than 150 garden poles. They cannot use their bare hand to take it out, right? They're not taking one or two, they're taking more than 150.
This was the garden where the tomato cages were taken from.
The executive director of Urban Bounty, which looks after the busy green space, says 38 tomato cages and whole plots of flowers and potatoes have vanished.
So it seems like there's much more of an effort to actually scope out what's here during the day and then come back and actually do some rather large excavation at night and removal of things at nighttime.
Creamer says she reported the June theft to police. Terra Nova Community Garden is located in an ecologically protected area and a rural public park. The city's mayor says that makes it tough to add special lighting or security cameras.
It just seems so brazen and unnecessary, frankly, so it's too bad.
Mayor Malcolm Brody says they can't install security cameras because of privacy concerns, and motion sensor lighting could affect plants.
It really is difficult as a problem to deal with, but we are seeing what we can do, and we're working with Urban Bounty and anybody else that's volunteering.
Some gardeners here are hoping that bringing some public attention to the issue, the thefts will stop.
Just respect the gardener. We put so many effort on it. Yeah, if they want, they can ask. We are happy to share.
Mira Baines, CBC News, Richmond.
We have an update on a story we brought you last week. Simon Fraser University's library website did have plans to stop hosting a collection of the Japanese-Canadian newspaper, The New Canadian. But SFU has now reversed course after some pushback. The New Canadian was first published in Vancouver in 1938 and ran until 2001. SFU's library said they had to remove it from its website as they migrate their collection to a new system. But after more than 3,000 people signed an online petition calling for the archives to be saved, they have been. Poet and playwright Carolyn Nakagawa says reading the paper's stories about Japanese Canadians written more than 80 years ago brings their voices to life. A Penticton winery owner has had to shut his doors after a massive water main break flooded his property and caused a sinkhole to appear. Take a look.
Picture the volume of water from a swimming pool coming out from underneath your building every minute, and people are running around scrambling through flooded water, racing to get their cars out before they possibly disappear in a sinkhole in the back of our property. So it was sheer chaos. So there's a couple of mains that supply the especially one large main that supplies most of the Penticton's northeast agricultural district here. And that happens to run right in front of our winery. The infrastructure was put in the mid 60s. The pipe ruptured. There's about a 4-foot rupture in this cast iron, kind of antiquated infrastructure that was used back in that era, and that's what caused the washout at our property. Yeah, it's a bit overwhelming, considering all the other things we've had to deal with this year, and never mind the COVID era and all that stuff. But you go into like last year with the slides, closing down the highway, the shutting down South Okanagan due to fires in West Kelowna last season. And then last season there was already a smaller winter kill situation. But then in January this year, in catastrophic, annihilation of our vineyards, having to replant that. My biggest point of contention is probably not the managers that are dealing with this and the staff that are boots on the ground here dealing with these ever increasing infrastructure problems. It's the decisions upstairs that's really prioritizing things that I think maybe looks better on a brochure versus the stuff that's underground, that's the backbone of our communities. It's been a lot of challenges this year. I think a lot of farmers and growers throughout the Okanagan have suffered some serious setbacks, and you know, it hasn't been easy.
Darius Madavi joins us now with a first look at the weather. There was some thunder and lightning earlier this morning.
I know, and I missed it. Did you hear it?
I did not.
Okay.
No, but you Hamilton kids, you love that, don't you?
I do. I love lightning. I'm very sad to have missed it. I did hear a downpour this morning, and that not quite lightning, but it was something at least. A lot of that lightning happened up in the Alpine, over in the North Shore, West Vancouver, North Vancouver, probably hearing the loudest lightning, as well as quite a bit over in Howe Sound. Now, since this morning, we've also started to see a little bit in the last couple hours on some parts of the island, especially the South Island here. We're starting to see a couple lightning strikes, but most of it down in Washington State, as well as up on the west coast of the island, heading up towards the North Island. So still some convective activity happening, but generally fairly calm across the province right now. We do have a special weather statement in place for parts of the interior, as well as over in Whistler, Pemberton, Kamloops. Those are probably the biggest areas that are affected by this, but warning of up to anywhere from 25 to 40 millimeters of rainfall where it's heaviest. Those higher elevations probably getting most of that rainfall, but still pretty heavy coming across Friday night into Saturday morning. So that's when we're expecting to see most of that rainfall. If we zoom out to the rest, again, I just want to show our the system that's actually bringing that rain. If you take a look here, you can see that low pressure system sweeping up across the province, dumping all that rain Friday night into Saturday. Then brief reprieve on Sunday, a bit of sunnier weather, sun and cloud coming in and out. And then another low comes in, bringing some more rain to the province on Monday. So we'll take a closer look at when exactly that rain will arrive and how long it'll last later this hour.
Sounds good. Thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
You've probably heard this phrase before, the luck of the Irish. It often means bad luck, but that's not the case at an Irish pub in Vancouver. As the CBC's Rafferty Baker explains, this past weekend, 15 staff members won a $1 million lottery prize.
Yeah, this is what they gave us this morning.
A $1 million novelty check. Not bad for the group's first Lotto Max ticket. Foy's general manager, James Brown, organized the 15-staff lottery group last week and bought the winning ticket. On Saturday, he checked it with an app.
I didn't believe it at the time. I had to read it a couple of times. I thought it was 1,000, and then I thought it was 10,000, and I started working my way up to 100,000, and I started counting the zeros, and yeah, I just went pale, and it was just crazy. It was a surreal experience.
We didn't believe him. It's kind of only really settled in today that we actually, when we collected the check, and now it still won't feel real until it's in each individual's bank account.
News of the huge prize spread among the winners on Saturday.
I was kind of hyping myself up for it's going to be a really busy shift. Then Liv rings me and I was like, okay, what's going on? So as I'm on the phone to her, I'm checking, I was like, this is insane.
Connor Quinn and his partner both work at Foy's, and they both pitched in for the ticket. That means 2 shares of the winnings for about $133,000.
It's relieving in a way. Like, I work 2 jobs as well as like a lot of other people in here do. So it's kind of, I was even thinking on my walk in, I was like, I know we have money for rent, but it's how tight is it going to be?
Now the pair are planning for a down payment on a home and a vacation back to Ireland for Christmas. For the owner, this isn't the first bit of good luck. He started the pub 10 months ago thanks to a series of winning sports bets. And his winnings are going straight back into the business.
My mine's already gone in the bar. I have a lot of renovations that are going on here inside the bar, so that's mine's already spent.
There are a few staff members who aren't sharing the big prize.
They were in there and they didn't pay in time for the cutoff.
Yeah, that's sad unfortunately, but we're going to look after them. So
management isn't worried about anyone quitting their jobs, but there may be some long holidays coming up.
15 people's lives have changed here, so yeah, it really is life-changing money amount to win. Yeah, I'm delighted for everybody that was involved, and I couldn't have done it with a better group of people.
The group says they'll definitely continue buying lottery tickets together, hoping they can beat the odds once again. Rafferty Baker, CBC News, Vancouver.
Coming up, 60 years to the day since Beatlemania hit Vancouver. The cultural shockwave that concert sent through the city and beyond. Stick around. 60 years ago today, Beatlemania hit Vancouver. It was the rock band's first concert in Canada. They hit the stage at Old Empire Stadium to more than 20,000 fans, the largest crowd of their first North American tour. It was a riotous show, to say the least, so much so that midway through, the crowd was told to calm down or the Fab Four would have to leave. Take a look. Fast forward to 1984, 20 years after that iconic show, and CBC News spoke with 4 concert-goers who were there about what they remembered from that night.
Same stadium, but older. Some of the same people, also older.
Well, actually, we drove out in a Mustang. I remember that because the Mustangs had just come out in 1964, and we all felt so cool driving out here. But that's all I remember.
1964. San Francisco hadn't even invented hippies by then.
I had what was called a bogey cut at that time, which was a crew cut on top and greased down on the sides with, I used to use, not Brill cream, was another, almost a bear grease that I used to use to grease down the sides, combed into a sharp ducktail on the back.
Lindsay Forsberg was 16.
But I remember a really white light, and it felt really dreamlike to me, because I'd been looking forward to it for so long. I couldn't believe that I was actually seeing the Beatles. And I just remember screaming.
Were you a screamer?
Yeah, I didn't know I was going to. I screamed and cried, I think, much to the disgust of the men we were with.
And Elizabeth Wilson was just 12, brought from Nanaimo by her mother.
Who was your favorite Beatle?
George.
Where'd you get the button?
I got it that night. I wore this button on the night of the Beatles concert.
And you've had it all these years?
I've had it all these years, yeah. I still have my ticket stub somewhere. I have the program, the original program.
You've had all that for 20 years?
Yes.
Joining us for more on this is Pat Carabray, a music professor at UBC's Chan Center for the Performing Arts. Pat, we've seen how momentous this show was for fans, 20,000 plus of them. How big was it for Vancouver as a city that the Beatles did their first Canadian show here?
Oh, I think it was huge. I mean, it's one of those things that every place they landed, it became a major event. And I think about the beginnings of the stadium concert business. I mean, they didn't even have amplifiers big enough so that the audience could hear them. So, I mean, it's just the beginning of a whole new era and super exciting.
Now, these concerts were, as you've said, much different than what we're used to now. Not as good sound, different lighting. They played for less than half an hour, and Red Robinson had to tell the crowd to essentially shut up or they wouldn't be able to go back on. What were some of the big hits from that year that they were playing?
Oh, well, I mean, you know, Twist and Shout and She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah. You know, all these were amazing songs. I mean, I think, you know, it's a time when we had 2 television channels, you know, and everybody gathered together to hear these new things. I remember, and I wasn't a teenager yet, I remember when they were on the Ed Sullivan Show. So, I mean, again, the industry of popular music is just starting to evolve so quickly, with music being heard, you know, in ways that it never was before. People with transistor radios. It used to be that you had to gather around a family radio, and now all of a sudden, you know, it was just so much more portable that people could hear the music and really catch on to it and enjoy it in new ways.
Now, these concerts, and this was massive for its time, in terms of crowd size, were really something that people had not yet experienced before. This is sort of the dawning of the big stadium show, right?
Oh, absolutely. And like I say, the technology wasn't there to support it. The security wasn't there to support it. You know, crowd control and management. Just think about, you know, those many people all extremely excited. Now we're much more used to this, and you know, it wouldn't be too many years from now when rock bands would start, you know, with biker gang guys doing crowd control for them. So I mean, it was just so new that you know, poor Red had, you know, sit down or they will have to go home. Yeah. So I mean, it really is such a new thing for Canadian audiences, for Vancouver audiences, and really for audiences around the world.
Pat Carabray from UBC Centre for the Performing Arts, we really appreciate your time and your perspective. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
The Democratic National Convention is wrapping up tonight in Chicago, where Kamala Harris will accept the party's nomination for presidential candidate. More on that next. Back to our top story now. It's been a whiplash of a day for railway workers across Canada. First, locked out by their employers, then effectively ordered back to work by Ottawa just hours later when it told the country's two main freight railways to enter binding arbitration after labour talks collapsed. More now from Nisha Patel.
Just 16 hours after the lockout began, the federal government stepped in.
The impacts of the current impasse are being borne by all Canadians.
The Labour Minister changing course, turning the dispute over to the Canada Industrial Relations Board.
We are asking the board to direct a resumption of activities and a return to work at the railways. We are asking them to begin the process of binding arbitration and to extend collective agreements that are currently in place.
Almost immediately, Canadian Pacific Kansas City said it was preparing to restart railway operations. CN Rail ended its lockout and initiated a recovery plan.
We are satisfied that this is coming to an end. However, we would have preferred a negotiated settlement, obviously.
The union, however, said picket lines would remain in place while it consults with legal counsel. In a statement writing, Canada's two major railways manufactured this crisis, held the country hostage, and manipulated the government. Teamsters Canada Rail Conference is deeply disappointed by this shameful decision. Together, the CN and CPKC rail networks stretch across the country and crucially link with the U.S. all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. From farmers to miners to manufacturers, even a brief shutdown hit hard.
We have not been able to ship liquid chlorine since Monday of last week due to the embargoes and moving the safety material off of the rail. So we are now on day 11 of no shipments of chlorine.
We are losing, for every day of the strike, $55 to $63 million a day in lost sales for our fertilizer products.
Small businesses, too, may have paid dearly.
I think if I can learn anything from the past couple of years, there's always a cause and effect, you know, and even a week's delay can be an issue.
With high costs and slim margins, there's little room for the unexpected.
A lot of our businesses are just barely surviving, so anything that pushes us over the edge.
Nisha Patel reporting. The Democratic National Convention wraps up tonight with a speech from presidential candidate Kamala Harris. It's being held in Chicago, but there are watch parties all around, including here in Vancouver, organized by Democrats abroad.
We've seen a massive surge of excitement and engagement since Kamala's announcement, and just so many people, so many volunteer interests, so much member interest, and so we're really excited for this. It feels like a rejuvenation of the party, for sure.
Harris will likely spend some time talking about the party's former candidate, current U.S. President Joe Biden, but she's also expected to share her story and possibly talk some policy. The CBC's Katie Simpson has more from Chicago.
Everything that's been happening inside this arena over the past week has been building to this moment. Kamala Harris is going to walk out onto that stage and formally accept the Democratic nomination to be the party's presidential nominee. She'll also deliver what will likely be one of the most important speeches of her political career. The vibe, the atmosphere, it's expected to be rock and roll. There's going to be celebrities, there's going to be musical guests. They want to spread a sense of joy and excitement that so many Democrats that you talk to here on the floor and in and around the convention site, that's what they say this 4-day sort of love-in has really been about. Now, Kamala Harris's running mate, Tim Walz, had his first opportunity to introduce himself to Americans last night, trying to keep that vibe going, introducing himself as America's friendly neighbor.
It's the honor of my life to accept your nomination for Vice President of the United States.
The big challenge for Democrats going forward after this convention wraps up is trying to find a way to keep the momentum going. One thing to remember about political conventions, this is a space filled with people that are very much like-minded. They're very excited and enthusiastic. But once this is over, trying to take that enthusiasm and turn it into momentum, trying to get out the vote, trying to appeal to voters beyond the Democratic base, that is going to be a challenge in an election that is expected to be incredibly close. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Chicago.
More action from the federal government today on the sale of flavored nicotine pouches. As of next week, it will be illegal for the pouches to be sold anywhere but from behind a pharmacy counter. The CBC's Marina von Stackelberg shows us why and why it took so long.
Okay, one green and one purple.
In a matter of days, nicotine pouches will be pulled from gas stations and convenience store shelves. Fruity flavors will be completely recalled. Only mint will be available if you ask a pharmacist for it.
How come they look like candy? I don't think so.
But inside this container are tiny pouches placed between your gum and cheek. Doctors say they release the nicotine equivalent of smoking 3 to 4 cigarettes. Anti-tobacco organizations have been calling for a crackdown for nearly a year. They say the pouch flavors and bright packages do resemble candy, and teens are using them.
It has been so deeply disturbing to see so many young people becoming addicted to these nicotine pouches who've never had any interaction with cigarettes.
Imperial Tobacco, the cigarette company that makes Zonic pouches, will have 6 months to pull all advertising that could appeal to youth and to change its packaging to include a warning label. Health advocates say that can't come soon enough.
The fall term in school is very important with respect to the norms that are set by kids and the introduction of new products, whether it's fidget spinners or vaping products or nicotine pouches.
Imperial says its products aren't meant for anyone under the age of 18 and tells stores to check ID. But until now, selling the pouches to kids was legal. That's because Health Canada approved Zonic to help adults quit cigarettes. The health minister has accused Imperial of using that as a loophole.
We were duped. Unfortunately, sometimes you get duped.
As Ottawa clamps down, community groups have scrambled to stop another nicotine product from addicting the next generation.
As a young person, you might not be able to differentiate exactly what it is. And you might just think that, oh, this product looks cool, like, let me try it out.
Researchers say governments need to get more nimble to better keep up with big tobacco.
We need to get past this period where the industry throws out products and we're blind until a year or two later when we say, oh, it's okay or it's not okay.
Marina von Stackelberg reporting. Italian officials say UK tech billionaire Mike Lynch is among the 6 people now confirmed to have died when a super-yacht sank off the coast of Italy earlier this week. Lynch's body was recovered yesterday and his identity released today. His 18-year-old daughter, Hannah, is still listed as missing. Lynch's wife was rescued along with 14 other people. 4 other bodies were found yesterday. The body of the boat's chef, who grew up in Calgary, was recovered just hours after the yacht sank on Monday. Data obtained by CBC News reveals Canada's library systems have gone from places of quiet learning to hotspots for drugs and violence. Stick around. Our science and climate specialist Darius Madavi joins us with our second BC-wide look at the weather. What's up?
Yes, we've got some showers still happening across much of the south coast that may spread to Vancouver soon enough. But generally speaking, we've got some more precipitation coming across the province, which is great news for fires, great news for the drought situation, which according to the update today, hasn't really changed much. We got a worsening in a couple areas. Haida Gwaii, for instance, is in drought level 4, moving up a level from level 3, which is quite unusual for that part of the province, which is usually quite wet, and all of Vancouver Island still in drought level 5. So any rain that we do get is very much welcome news. Now we are seeing that precipitation come into parts of the province. Really the first big wave at Friday, overnight into Saturday, mostly focused on the southern half of the province. But then if we let this roll a little bit further forward, we'll also notice then as that trough moves in over the northern parts of the province, another wave of precipitation, mostly concentrated in the north, but then also making its way down to the south, especially for the south coast, but also parts of the southern interior. So some decent precipitation on the way. If you look at our accumulation amounts over the next 48 hours, you'll see that coming up from the south. Now keep in mind, this doesn't include that extra amount that's coming late Sunday into Monday, and then possibly into Tuesday as well. But just for the next 48 hours, you can see some decent rainfall coming, especially to the more southern parts of the province. Across not much of the island, but Victoria may be getting some decent rainfall. It might not be quite this much, given the rain shadow, but some decent rainfall coming to that part of the island, as well as across the lower mainland. And if we zoom in here, you'll notice that some parts of the lower mainland getting a lot more rainfall than others. If you are in the valley or up around areas like Maple Ridge, expect to possibly get a lot more. And given those thunderstorms possible Friday night into Saturday morning, we could also see some very local, very high amounts of rainfall, so possibly in the Alpine as well. Now that where exactly we're seeing those highest amounts could change a little bit, could move a little bit closer to North Vancouver, but for now, that's what we're looking at. In terms of temperatures across the province, tomorrow, staying high in the southern interior, that's really where we're only seeing the change, and then a big drop into Saturday, dropping in some places as much as 15 degrees, so quite a bit cooler on Saturday, and then Sunday, slight moderation, but not much. So overall, it's not until we get into mid-next week that temperatures start to be right around seasonal again, and then sticking with that, it seems, for a while, although a while out from that as well. In terms of across the province, a few thunderstorms still possible in the south, but generally fairly calm. And in terms of a Vancouver forecast, that cloud coming in and out, that rain coming in and out, a little bit of sunshine for Sunday, but generally that overnight Friday to Saturday is going to be the big weather story for now. So we'll focus on next week as it comes.
Sounds good. Thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
Libraries have a lot to offer. A quiet place to read, community programming, perhaps a place to take refuge. But data obtained by CBC News shows they are increasingly becoming violent places. Anya Zolajowski has the story.
A man waves a knife. Police move in. Video captured in a Toronto public library. Hostile incidents are happening in Canada's libraries more often than you might think. Surprising, perhaps, for some, but par for the course for many.
I've seen books thrown at staff. I've had to call police for people bringing knives, fighting among each other.
The librarian spoke to us confidentially, worried about repercussions if she speaks out. She's had to respond to aggressive behavior, suspected overdoses, and threats.
Just profound anger, and we're there, and it's directed at us.
And these incidents are on the rise. CBC News obtained data from a number of public library systems across the country. Between 2022 and 2023, Winnipeg saw a 21% increase in the number of incidents. Vancouver, a 14% increase. And Toronto, a 71% increase. Over 2,300 incidents total, or about 45 incidents per week across Toronto libraries last year. The number of suspected overdoses in Toronto's public libraries up a staggering 529%.
I've had to call 911 before for someone I couldn't wake up.
The growing crisis isn't just in urban centers, but in small towns too. In Amherst, Nova Scotia,
we've probably called the police more in the last 2 years than we have in the previous 5.
U of T professor Siobhan Stevenson has researched this trend. She says it's a sign of the times, and that libraries are often the only free place for the most vulnerable people in our communities to go.
This is not a library problem. This is a political problem. This is a social problem.
She says governments need to spend more money on shelters, affordable housing, and food banks like this one, instead of cutting that funding.
People in the trenches and running these places are busy enough. it's time that people at other levels of public service started talking about it.
We're passionate about it. We want to protect people. And then there's a lot of stuff that we didn't expect to be in our scope. You want to help people, and they're setting us up to fail.
We reached out to the City of Toronto. It funds Toronto's libraries just like this one. In a statement, a spokesperson said that they're committed to finding ways to address the problem. They did not say whether there are plans to increase funding to local social services. Anya Zolojewski, CBC News, Toronto.
It's about the size of a baseball. A 2,400 carat diamond has been found in Africa. We'll tell you how they found it after the break. Imagine holding a fist-sized rock, and it's a diamond.
Well, that's what a Canadian mining company unearthed in Botswana. This is the diamond. It's believed to be the second largest ever dug out of a mine.
2,492 carat stone, which weighs about, half a kilo. The company, Lucara, used X-ray equipment designed to look for large, high-value diamonds, to say the least.
Yeah, most naturally formed diamonds are at least 1 billion years old, with some older than 3 billion years. Officials said it's too early to put a price on the stone or decide how it would be sold, but another smaller diamond from the same mine sold for $63 million in 2016.
Check your coach cushions.
Yeah, I don't.
No. Let somebody else have it.
Yeah. Let's be generous.
There you go.
Yeah. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
And Michelle Gassou will have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. And I will see you on Tuesday. Take care.